The vast Texas desert stretched endlessly, a sea of golden sands rippling under the scorching afternoon sun. Cattle lazily chewed cud under the few sparse trees, their tails flicking away persistent flies. A distant highway hummed with the occasional passing truck, kicking up dust in its wake. Everything was as it had always been until it wasn't. The thing fell from the sky with a crackling boom that shook the earth, flattening sagebrush and rattling the windows of a tiny town on the edge of nowhere. It wasn't an asteroid. It wasn't a meteor. No, the behemoth that crashed into the dry, cracked ground was something else entirely. A starship. And not just any starship, a junker, rusted in places where it shouldn't be, spewing neon blue smoke from vents that looked like they had been hastily patched with some kind of alien duct tape. Jesse Boone, ex-Air Force mechanic and self-proclaimed fixer of anything that runs, was the first to lay eyes on it. He stood at the edge of his workshop, a half-disassembled pickup truck behind him, a greasy wrench still clutched in his calloused hand. His first thought wasn't fear or awe. No, Jesse squinted at the wreck and muttered, "Well, hell. That's gonna be a pain to tow." His teenage niece, Ellie, had her phone out within seconds, recording everything. "Uncle Jesse, this is, like, the biggest thing to ever happen in Texas, and you're worried about towing?" Jesse ignored her, stepping forward cautiously. The ship was enormous, easily the size of a football field, its exterior a patchwork of dented metal and exposed wiring. The insignia near the hull looked like an angry squid, its tentacles curled in what he assumed was an alien form of irritation. He tapped the hull experimentally. It gave off a hollow clang. "Yap. That's busted," he said, stepping back as a hatch hissed and slid open. A blast of humid, sour-smelling air whooshed out, and with it came a figure. It was humanoid but distinctly not human, 7 feet tall, draped in tattered robes, with a face that looked like a disgruntled lobster. The alien staggered forward, looking around before groaning and collapsing onto the dirt. Ellie gasped. "Oh my God. First contact." Jesse frowned and nudged the alien with his boot. "You okay, big guy?" A gurgling wheeze escaped the creature's throat before it lifted its head. Its deep-set eyes, black and glossy as obsidian, focused on Jesse. "It was a mistake," it rasped. "We should not have left it here." Ellie blinked. "Left what here?" The alien struggled to sit up, groaning. "This ship. We abandoned it. Junk. Scrap metal. No good." Its mandibles clicked together in what seemed like frustration. "You should run." Jesse scratched his chin, glancing back at the ship. It didn't look threatening. If anything, it looked like it was a few years away from disintegrating into a pile of space rust. But there was something about the way the alien said it, the urgency in its voice, that set his nerves on edge. Before he could ask any more questions, a second noise filled the air. A low hum, deep and resonant, rolling through the desert like an approaching thunderstorm. Jesse and Ellie turned toward the sky just as a new set of lights blinked into existence. Not one. Not two. But at least a dozen ships, sleek and menacing, descending through the atmosphere. Ellie swore under her breath. "I think they want their junk back." The lobster-like alien groaned, covering its face with a clawed hand. "You do not understand. They do not want it back." It pointed a trembling limb at Jesse. "They want to make sure no one else has it." Jesse felt his stomach tighten. Whatever had just been dumped on his land, it was more than a pile of scrap. And the people coming for it. They weren't here to negotiate. "Well," Jesse muttered, wiping his hands on his grease-stained jeans. "Looks like I got myself a project." The tension in the desert air was thick enough to choke on. Jesse stood with his arms crossed, staring at the looming alien ships descending like vultures over a fresh kill. The rusted junker of a starship lay behind him, its twisted hull hissing and groaning as its systems flickered erratically. The lobster-faced alien at his feet wheezed and shook its head. "You cannot fight them," it rasped. "You should flee." Jesse glanced at Ellie, who was still filming on her phone, her expression oscillating between exhilaration and raw panic. "Flee? Ain't exactly my style, buddy." A booming voice, synthesized and grating, blasted from the nearest alien vessel. "Unauthorized possession of Imperial scrap detected. Surrender immediately." Non-compliance will be met with force. Ellie swallowed. Uncle Jesse? This might be a good time to think about running. Jesse rolled his shoulders. Or we think about fixing that piece of junk before they fry us. The lobster alien let out a gurgling noise Jesse assumed was the equivalent of a sarcastic laugh. Fix it. You are mad. It does not work. Jesse smirked. It doesn't work yet, star. He turned, heading toward his workshop, beckoning Ellie to follow. Come on, kid. We ain't got much time. Inside the workshop, Jesse grabbed every tool he could think of: wrenches, welding torches, even some duct tape, because if duct tape couldn't fix it, nothing could. Ellie dropped her phone on the workbench and pulled out a notepad, her hands shaking slightly as she sketched a rough diagram of the ship's broken systems. Okay, so let's assume this thing runs on something similar to an internal combustion engine, but, alien, she mumbled. Jesse tapped the diagram. We gotta find a way to restart its power core. If we can get it running, maybe we can at least scare those bastards off. Ellie's eyes widened. Wait, you wanna fly it? Jesse, we don't even know how this thing works. Jesse grinned. Guess we're about to learn. Outside, the alien ships circled lower, their lights scanning the ground, searching. The lead vessel let out another warning blare. Non-compliance detected. Engaging strike protocol. The first shot landed just outside the workshop, sending a plume of dirt and smoke skyward. Jesse ducked instinctively, shielding Ellie. Well, that's our cue. They sprinted back to the ship, lugging their hastily gathered supplies. Jesse pried open a panel, exposing a mess of wires and circuits. Ellie, find me something that looks like a battery. Ellie rummaged through the debris, finally holding up a glowing cylinder the size of a car engine. This looks important. Perfect. Now let's see if we can rig it back into place. The lobster alien watched them with an expression that seemed equal parts horror and begrudging respect. You two are insane. Yup, Jesse said, jamming the cylinder into its slot. The ship hummed, lights flickering erratically. Now let's hope insanity works. The engines sputtered, then roared to life with a guttural whine. The hull groaned, the ship straining against gravity. Jesse whooped. That's what I'm talking about. Ellie gasped. They're charging weapons. Jesse's grin widened. Then let's see if we can give them a reason to back off. He reached for the controls, fingers tightening over unfamiliar buttons. With a deep breath, he slammed a fist down. The ship lurched, a pulse of raw energy surging through its frame, and then the world erupted into chaos. The ship roared to life with a violent shudder, its thrusters screaming as Jesse gritted his teeth against the force of acceleration. The desert landscape blurred beneath them as the hunk of alien scrap tore free from the ground, a surge of power crackling through its battered frame. Sparks danced wildly across the control panels, flickering erratically as if the vessel itself wasn't entirely sure it wanted to stay airborne. Ellie clung to the nearest handhold, her eyes wide with a mix of terror and exhilaration. Uncle Jesse, I think we just made things a whole lot worse. Jesse barely heard her over the alarms blaring in a language he didn't understand. His fingers danced over unfamiliar controls, flipping switches and twisting dials in an attempt to stabilize their ascent. Kid, we're already knee-deep in it. Might as well see if we can swim. Outside, the alien ships shifted formation, their sleek forms adjusting to track their newly airborne target. The lead vessel's weapons flared ominously, arcs of glowing energy gathering at its cannons. A metallic voice bellowed through their comms. You have interfered with Imperial property. This violation warrants immediate termination. Jesse spat a curse. Yeah. Well, you'll have to catch us first. He yanked back on what he hoped was a throttle. The ship jerked, nearly throwing them both against the control panel as it shot forward at breakneck speed. The alien fleet wasted no time. Beams of scorching light sliced through the sky, just missing their hull by inches. They're not playing around. Ellie shouted, frantically scanning the unfamiliar controls. We need weapons, shields, anything. The lobster alien, still half-slumped near the rear of the cockpit, clicked its mandibles in frustration. The ship was scrap. We disabled its weapons before abandoning it. You cannot fight them. Jesse smirked. Then we better get creative. With no shields and no guns, their options were as limited as they were suicidal. Jesse twisted the ship into a barrel roll, dodging another barrage of energy fire. The controls fought back, straining against every command like a stubborn mule. Ellie, find me something useful. Ellie's fingers flew over the displays, deciphering the alien symbols as best she could. There's something. A power surge module? If I can reroute energy from the engines. Do it. Whatever it is, do it fast. Another blast rocked the ship. Sparks flew, panels flickered, and a burst of acrid smoke filled the cabin. Jesse swore and slapped at the nearest vent. Come on, you bucket of bolts. Hold together. Ellie yanked out a mess of cables, connecting them in a way that would have made any sane engineer cry. The ship shuddered violently, then, without warning, a massive pulse of energy rippled outward from its hull. The nearest alien ships bucked midair, their systems flickering wildly as the surge overloaded their circuits. One spiraled out of control, crashing into another with an explosive fireball. The remaining ships hesitated, momentarily thrown into disarray. That worked. That actually worked. Ellie gasped, stunned. Jesse grinned. Kid, you might just be the best mechanic in the galaxy. Now let's make a run for it before they figure out what happened. But their celebration was short-lived. The lead vessel, larger and far more advanced than the rest, adjusted its trajectory. The comms crackled again. Last warning. Surrender the vessel or face obliteration. Jesse tightened his grip on the controls. Like hell we will. The alien flagship's weapons charged again, this time with enough power to turn them into dust. Jesse's mind raced. They couldn't outrun them. They couldn't outgun them. But maybe, just maybe, they could outsmart them. He locked eyes with Ellie. I got one last trick up my sleeve. You trust me? Ellie hesitated for only a second before nodding. Always. Jesse took a deep breath, adjusted the trajectory, and aimed their ship directly at the enemy flagship. Hold on to something. We're going straight at M. The battered Starship hurtled toward the enemy flagship, engines howling in defiance. Jesse clenched the controls, his knuckles white with strain as the alien warship loomed larger by the second. Ellie held her breath, her heart hammering in her chest. The comms blared again with an urgent command, cease immediately or face annihilation. Jesse smirked. Yeah. Let's see who blinks first. At the last possible second, he jerked the controls into a sharp roll, skimming past the flagship's hull so closely that the ship's outer plating sparked against their own. At the same moment, Ellie triggered the energy surge module one final time, sending a feedback loop into the alien fleet systems. The pulse spread like wildfire, short-circuiting weapon systems, navigation controls, and communications. The massive warship jerked and veered off course, its thrusters stuttering. The pursuing ships fell into chaos, some spiraling out of control while others simply went dark, adrift in the sky. Did we actually win? Ellie gasped, her hands still shaking over the controls. Jesse exhaled a long breath, leaning back against his seat. Looks like it. That little stunt fried their systems good. They won't be chasing us anytime soon. The lobster-like alien, who had remained in stunned silence throughout the ordeal, finally spoke. You two are unbelievable. That was suicide. And yet, you live. Jesse grinned. Funny how that works. Now, let's get this heap on the ground before it decides to break apart. They guided the ship back down, skidding to a rough but survivable landing in the Texas desert. Dust swirled around them as the battered vessel groaned one last time before finally settling in a huff of steam. The alien ships remained frozen in the sky, still crippled by the energy surge, too damaged to give chase. As Jesse and Ellie climbed out, Ellie turned to their alien companion. So, what was so important about this ship? Why did they want it destroyed so badly? The alien hesitated before speaking. It was once a prototype. A failed one. Abandoned because it was deemed inefficient and flawed. But in the right hands, in your asterisk hands, it became something greater. It survived. You survived. Jesse chuckled, shaking his head. So they were scared some stubborn humans might actually make it work. Typical. Ellie sighed, stretching her aching limbs. So, what happens now? The alien regarded them for a long moment before giving a deep, solemn nod. Now, they will retreat, recalibrate. The Empire does not take failure lightly. They will not forget you. But neither will I. Jesse placed a reassuring hand on Ellie's shoulder. Well, if they ever come back, they'll know what they're in for. We don't go down easy. Ellie smirked. Yeah. And next time, maybe we build something even better. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and violet, Jesse looked out over the desert and let out a satisfied sigh. You know, fixing up junk and making it work. That's just what we do. The moral was clear: greatness wasn't about having the best tools or the perfect design. It was about ingenuity, grit, and the refusal to quit, no matter the odds. The Empire had tried to erase what it deemed useless, but in the hands of the right people, even discarded scraps could become something extraordinary. And as long as humans had that spirit, they would never be defeated.